Section A. How I taught my grandmother to read. So children, now here is a warm-up session. According to the 211 census, if we will observe the different state of India, like India, if we will consider overall, the literacy rate is 74.04%. Among them, 82.14% is a male and 65.46% is a female. Kerala 94%, male is 96.11% and 92.0%. Lakshadweep, here we have 91.85%, 95.56% of male are literate and 87.95% the females are literate. Similarly, if we will go to a Mizoram, 91.33, 93.35 male percent are literate, 89.27 female percent are literate. Okay, you can see here Goa, Tripura, Daman Diu, Andaman and Nicobar and Delhi. Okay, so overall we can say the literacy rate is higher in Kerala. So let us start with the lesson. The first step towards solving many of the problems of our country is achieving literacy. Traditionally, girls were not sent to school but were given in a marriage when they were still very young. So they did not know how to read or write. Reading is an important to broaden our minds and expands our horizons. It is also a source of endless entertainment through books, comics, magazines and the like. Now if you will observe students, in our previous days, okay, now girls were not allowed to go for a school. Now in a history you might have learned the several events has been taken place, how the Jyotirao Phule has started the first girls school. Yes, the help of his wife Savitribai Phule. So in the previous day, the thinking of the people where the girl should get married earlier and they should only have a responsibility towards their house, towards their family and towards their children. But the important is that education is equally important both for man and woman. Why? Because when you can read, when you can write, the reading plays an important role. It broadens up your mind. It opens a new world for each and every one. It is an expand. It helps to expand our origins. Okay? When I was a girl of about 12. Now who was the girl? The author. And who was the author? Sudha Murthy. I used to stay in a village in North Karnataka with my grandparents. Those days the transport system was not very good. So we used to get the morning paper only in the afternoon. The weekly magazine used to come one day late. All of us would wait eagerly for the bus, which used to come with the paper, weekly magazine and the post. So, the author was about only 12 years old. And where she used to stay? She used to stay in a village in North Karnataka with his grandparent. Now in those days, the transport system was not so good as we have nowadays. No? If you want to read the news, what you do nowadays? You go on a Google, you search it and you get a news within a minute. Now most of us people have lost the habit of reading the newspaper because instantly in a quick of minute we get a news of each and every things. If you will start your TV, throughout the day you get a breaking news. But in those days the TV was a long matter. Okay. So to get the newspaper, so they have to wait for a day. So after the morning newspaper they used to get it in a afternoon, and the weekly magazine they used to get it one day after, when the birds used to come in a village. At that time, Triveni was very popular writer in Kannada language. She was a wonderful writer. Her style was easy to read and very convincing. Her stories usually deal with complete psychological problems in the lives of ordinary people and were always very interesting. So, there used to be a column in a newspaper during that period of time. Okay, children. Now, every writer they used to write on that column regarding a certain issue. So Triveni was one of the popular writer in Kannada language, and she was a wonderful writer. Her style was too easy to read and it was very acceptable by all the reader because everyone can read and understand the concept. And what was the main concept the writer or the reader was having? That was the psychological of the pupil, the day-to-day problems. Okay. Unfortunately for Kannada literature, she died very young. Even now, after 40 years, people continue to appreciate her novels. One of her novels called Kashi Yatra was appearing as a serial in Kannada weekly Karamvira then. It is a story of an old lady and her ardent. Ardent means strong desire to go to Kashi or Banaras. Most Hindus believe that going to Kashi and worshipping Lord Vishwavara is the ultimate punya. This old lady also believed in this and her struggle to go there was describing in that novel. Okay? So there was a novel written by whom? Triveni. The most popular novel written by a Triveni. Okay? And what was the name of that novel? Kashi Yatra. Now that novel was being translated into a TV serial. Okay, you might have seen so many of the TV serials where the novels are being translated into a serials and appearing as a serials. And the name of the serial was Karamvira and it was a Kannada weekly serial. Okay, and it was a story of an old lady who has strong desire. What type of a desire? To go to Kashi or Banaras. Now as a Hindu, even your grandmother, even your grandfathers, yes, your grandparents, we can say all together, they had a strong desire to visit to the Kashi, Banaras or Kedarnath, yes, so that they can earn the punya. It is a psychological of a Hindu pupil. So it's a story of an old lady, so how she has struggled to go there. In the story, there was also a young orphan girl who fell in love, but there was no money for the wedding. In the end, the old lady gives away all her savings without going to Kashi. She said, the happiness of this orphan girl is more important than worshipping Lord Vishwaswara at Kashi. So what was the moral of the story? Main theme of the story? The main theme of a story was that there was an orphan girl and who was in love. Okay, who fall in love, but there was no money for the wedding. So at the end, what the old lady did? Old lady gave away all her money which she had been saved. For what? To worship Lord Vishwaswara, to visit the Kashi. And at last what he say? The happiness of this orphan girl is more important than worshipping a Lord, worshipping a God at Kashi. My grandmother Krishtaka never went to school, so she could not read. Every Wednesday the magazine would come and I would read the next episode of this story to her. During that time, she would forget all her work and listen with the greatest concentration. Later, she could repeat the entire text by heart. My grandmother too never went to Kashi and she identified herself with the novel protagonist. Protagonist means the leading character. So more than anybody else, she was the one most interested in knowing what happened next in the story and used to insist that I read the serial out to her. Now, the story of that serial was been published in the newspaper. So, the author, what she used to do, even she used to read out the entire serial. For whom? For her grandmother. Why? Her grandmother, Krishtaka, she never went to a school and therefore she could not read. After hearing what happened next in Kashi Yatra, she would join her friends at the temple courtyard, where we children would also gather to play hide and seek. She would discuss the latest episode with her friend. At that time, I never understood why there was so much of debate about the story. Once I went for a wedding with my cousin to the neighboring village. In those days, a wedding was a great event. We children enjoy ourselves truly. We would eat and play endless, savoring the freedom. Savoring means enjoying truly, because there would be a lot of food, varieties of food and everything, okay? The freedom because all the elders were busy. I went for a couple of days but ended up staying there for a week. When I came back to my village, I saw my grandmother in tears. I was surprised, for I had never seen her cry even in the most difficult situation. So when the author has returned back from a wedding, so she went there for a couple of days, but she stayed there for a week. And when she returned back to the village, what she saw, the grandmother was crying. She was in a tears. Now the author was completely surprised, because even in a difficult situation also the grandmother used to never cry. What had happened? I was worried. Ava, is everything alright? Are you okay? I used to call her Ava, which means mother, in the Kannada spoken in a North Karnataka. She nodded but did not reply. I did not understand and forgot about it. In the night after dinner, we were sleeping in the open terrace of the house. It was a summer night and there was full moon. Ava came and sat next to me. Her affectionate hand touched my forehead. I realized she wanted to speak. I asked her, what's the matter? So throughout the day, the author kept on asking Ava, that is a grandmother, whom she used to call as a mother. So what was happening? But at the end of the day, when they were just sleeping in the open terrace, she came and touched the forehead of the author. The author realized that she wants to speak something. When I was young girl, I lost my mother. There was nobody to look after and guide me. My father was a busy man and got married again. In those days, people never considered education essential for girls. So I never went to school. I got married very young and had a children. I became very busy. Later, I had grandchildren and always felt so much happiness in cooking and feeding all of you. At times, I used to regret not going to school, so I made sure that my children and grandchildren study well. Now, who is telling this? The grandmother is telling a story to the author. What? That when she was when grandmother was young, okay, she has lost her mother and nobody was there to look after her. So, and his father was quite busy man and he got married again. So in those days, the education was not being considered as an essential part. So at a very young age, what happened? She got married and she had a children and she was very busy with her life. Later on, she had a grandchildren and she was always feeling happy in cooking and feeding all of them. But at this time, she felt regard. There was a moment when she felt that she should also had a right to complete her education. Therefore, to fulfill her desire, what she did, she had allowed her children to complete the education. I could not understand why my 62 years old grandmother was telling me a 12-year-old story of her life in the middle of the night. But I knew I loved her immensely and there had to be some reason why she was talking to me. I looked at her face. It was unhappy, and her eyes were filled with tears. She was a good-looking lady who was usually always smiling. Even today, I cannot forget the worried expression on her face. I leaned forward and held her hand. Ava, don't cry. What's the matter? Can I help you in any way? Yes, I need your help. You know, when you were away, Karamvira, come as usual. I opened the magazine. I saw the picture that accompanies the story of Kashi Yatra, and I could not understand anything that was written. Many times I rubbed my hand over the page, wishing they could understand what was written, but I knew it was not possible. If only I was educated enough. I waited eagerly for you to return. So, what was the reason behind that? Why she was crying? She needed help. What help? To read out the magazine. Okay, now she was very curious to know the episode, what was going to happen. So she had rubbed so many of the times a letter. She wants to read, she wants to write, but she was unable. So she was eagerly waiting for the author to return back from the marriage. I felt you would come early and read for me. I even thought of going to the village and asking you to read for me. I could have asked somebody in the village, but I was too embarrassed to do so. I felt so sorry, dependent and helpless. We were well off, but use in money when I cannot be independent. I did not know what to answer. Ava continued. I have decided I want to learn the Kannada alphabet from tomorrow onwards. I will work very hard. I will keep Saraswati Puja during the Sara as the deadline. That day I should be able to read a novel on my own. I want to be independent. So what the grandmother say? That we had a lot of money and everything, but the only one thing that I was not having, that I was unable to read the novel. So from today onwards, I want to start to read the letters of the Kannada, and my deadline is that, and I will keep a Saraswati. That who is going to keep? The grandmother is going to keep the Saraswati Puja during the Sara. So that would be a deadline for the grandmother, so that she will be able to read the entire novel and she will become independent. I saw the determination on her face, yet I laughed at her. Ava, at the age of this 62, you want to learn the alphabets? All your hair is grey, your hands are wrinkled, you wear spectacles, and you work so much in the kitchen. Childlessly, I made a fun of the old lady, but she just smiled. For a good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome any obstacles. I will work harder than anybody, but I will do it. For learning, there is no age bar. Tomorrow, we will start our class here. Ava, I said. The next day, I started my tuition. Ava was a wonderful student. The amount of homework she did was amazing. She would read, repeat, write, and recreate. I was her only teacher, and she was my first student. Little did I know then that one day I would become a teacher in computer science and teach hundreds of students. The Dasara festival came as usual. Secretly, I bought Kashi Yatra, which has been published as a novel by that time. My grandmother called me to Puja place and made me sit down on a stool. She gave me a gift of frock material. Then she did something unusual. She bent down and touched my feet. I was surprised and taken aback. Elders never touch the feet of youngsters. We have always touched the feet of God, elders and teacher. We consider that as a mark of respect. It is a great tradition, but today the reverse has happened. It is not right. She said, I am touching the feet of a teacher, not my granddaughter, a teacher who taught me so well, with so much of affection. that I can read any novel confidently in such a short period. Now I am independent. It is my duty to respect a teacher. Is it not written in our scripture that a teacher should be respected, irrespective of the gender and age? I returned the namaskar to her by touching her feet and gave my gift to my first student. She opened it and read immediately the title Kashi Yatra by Triveni and the publisher name. I knew then that my student has passed with flying colors with a high grade. So, students, what are the moral you get from this lesson? That we can say to get a knowledge or to learn something, there is a no age bar. Okay, just you need the guts, just you need the courage, and just you need a willpower. That is the most important thing to overcome with any obstacles. So student, you might have understood the lesson very well. Now I will go through the grammar. Today we are going to do the reported speech, that is the direct and indirect speech. You have already learned about the direct and reported speech. When words are spoken by a person, it is called a direct speech. When someone else directs the speech is being reported, it is called a reported speech. Now here are the few points to keep in mind. When the reporting verb is in a past tense, the verb that is in a reported speech usually move one step back in a time. Ava said, Karamveer came as usual. Ava said that Karamveer had come as usual. Pronouns which are changed must match the meaning of the direct speech. I waited eagerly for you to return, said the grandmother. My grandmother said that she, that means I had converted into she. She had, what is else is added? Had. She had waited eagerly. You has converted to me, to return. Expression of time and place are also changed. Tomorrow we will start our class here, Ava. I said. I promised Ava that we would start her class there the next day. The tomorrow has changed into the next day. When we want to report a question, we use if or whether or one of WH word. The word order also changed to look like a normal statement. Ava, are you all right? I asked. I asked my grandmother if she was all right. Different reporting verbs are used to report what someone said more accurately than using say and tell. Can I help you in any way? I said. I inquired if I could help her in any way. So rewrite this sentence in the reported speech. Vinith said to me, why don't you do this assignment again? Okay children, so here is an answer. Vinith suggested that I should do that assignment again. Richmond said, I forgot to switch off the light before we left the house. Richmond said that he had forgotten to switch off the light before leaving the house. Swiss said to her sister, I shall help you with your homework. Swiss promised to help her sister with her homework. Gopa said to Ravi, don't you have to deliver this letter today? Gopa asked Ravi if he didn't have to deliver this letter that day. Hawaii said to me, you must visit me this evening. Hawaii insists that I, see a student, you has converted into I should visit her that evening. The teacher said to Jit, you had better complete this right now. The teacher told Jit that he had better complete his work right then. Munmun said to Tina, I think your car is going to need some petrol soon. Munmun warned Tina, that her car was going to need petrol soon. Nirusa said to her younger brother, "Why don't you stop that racket and sit down quietly for a few minutes?" Nirusa asked her younger brother to stop that racket and to sit quietly for a few minutes. Gurdeep said to me, "Let's go for a walk." Gurdeep suggested that we go for a walk. The man at the ticket counter said to Mr. Sen, "We have no more ticket left." The man at the ticket counter told Mr. Sen that they had no more tickets left. So student, you might have understood the direct and reported speech, how we have to change. Now we will see other items. So here are the sum of the sentences and we have to find out the meanings. Okay. She used to be the kind of a girl who was afraid of her own shadow, but she quite a brave little thing now. Now what is the meaning of afraid of her own shadow? Very timid, easily scared. Okay. He could either hide in the hollow tree and risk being killed by the snake he knew lived there, and try to make it home, racing over open land, risking the dragon world. It was a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. That is between the devil and the deep blue sea. So the meaning is between two bad options. You may be head chef in a 5-star restaurant, but here on the field I call the shots. That means to make a decision. She just asked if you had some free time to spend with her. You didn't have to jump down her throat like that, scold someone suddenly. This was going to be a piece of cake. Getting a A+ in the maths test was not going to be a problem. Piece of cake, quite easy. When it comes to singing Western classical music, Sam is head and shoulder above the rest. Way better in a skill than others. So all these are called items. Okay. An item, we can say, is an expression that cannot be understood from the meaning to a separate word, but that has separate meaning of its own. So children, you might have understood the direct and indirect speech, or we can say the reported speech and the items, and also the entire lesson. So goodbye, and we will meet on our next session. Bye.